my name is Cheryl Erickson, and I'm the Indigenous focused ECE instructor with Louis Riel Vocational College. Today in Chapter 9 of Understanding Children Through Observation, we'll take a brief look at authentic assessment. But before we get started, just a reminder to read Chapter 9, as this video isn't a replacement for your chapter reading. And so when we talk about authentic assessment, this is a form of assessment that is specific and natural to what a child has learned up to a certain point. And so meaning because it's in the moment, you're collecting data on children of maybe artwork that they might be doing, or taking photos or videos of where they are in a play. So it's real life. It's based on actual experiences that children have participated in, or creations that they've made. So it's a real natural unfolding of their development within that natural environment. And so when we look at authentic assessment, it is a comprehensive account of a child's experiences of play, of learning, of their health, and where they are developmentally. And so we also look at the types of assessments that we can do in an early learning environment. And so I've spoken to the fact that each early learning environment is unique in how they observe children and how they create their authentic assessment. So again, I'm going to show you a video that's attached of what some of these assessments look like in terms of portfolios or projects. However, it's also going to be unique to each center. And so when you do start your employment in a child care center, maybe they have practices on how they assess children in their development, or maybe these are things that you can bring to the center and perhaps implement in your future. So they're really nice ways to look at where children are learning, or measuring how children are learning and growing and developing in your environment. So one of the neatest types of assessment is a portfolio. And you often see portfolios not only in early learning centers, but portfolios are often utilized in the education system. So children are taking pieces or documents that they've worked on, say from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year, and we sit down with parents and we look at where they were, say in September of 2019, and we look at how they've progressed to the end of the school year, so say June of 2020. So you can see actual documentations they've done, how maybe their writing has evolved, or their drawing or coloring has evolved. You can look at physically, you can take a photo of a child in September, and then a photo of a child from June, and put it side by side, and you can see how they've grown. You can add things like growth charts, so you can physically put in a growth chart of how a child has grown physically within that year. So it's a really neat way to see that natural unfolding and progression of how a child is learning and growing and developing throughout the year. Another really useful assessment tool is projects. So again, it's real factual things that a child may be working on within that project. You can see what they're learning. That project maybe has photos of something a child's built, maybe the questions or assumptions that they've made, and what the natural outcome is. And you can question and document the child's responses throughout that project. So it's really kind of neat to see a specific learning objective and how that natural learning has unfolded as they've gone through and created that type of project. So journey books and life books are kind of similar, but again, it's natural photos of children interacting in their environment, as well as asking them questions, seeing what types of assumptions they have, and documentation of those natural outcomes and their responses. So again, some really neat assessment tools that we can use for children in their early learning environment, as well as don't forget the importance of videos and photos within your environment and having those available for children to see. You can take video and play that video within the environment, and also post social stories, learning stories on a bulletin board or a parent board within your center, because those are really important document and assessment tools as well that show the natural progression of children's development. So just in conclusion, please do view the video because it gives more detail and you can actually see what a portfolio looks like and what some projects look like to help you better understand this assessment process. If you have any questions regarding Chapter 9, please see your instructor, or if you have any questions regarding this video, also just check in to ensure you haven't missed any handouts or assignments pertaining to Chapter 9.
Authentic assessment as the preferred method in early childhood education. There are several types of assessment that are used in determining what a child has learned and understood, such as formative assessment, which is task-oriented, student-guided, and can be informal and formal. Summative assessment, which is conducted after an established period of learning. And authentic assessment, which focuses on the child using gained knowledge in a practical manner. Of these presented, I believe authentic assessment is the most appropriate method of assessment for the early childhood environment. Let's focus some more on authentic assessment. Authentic assessment uses activities to determine how students actively use the knowledge learned in application to everyday scenarios that present themselves. Psychology professor John Mueller of North Central College in Illinois defines this as a form of assessment in which students are asked to perform real-world tasks that demonstrate meaningful application of essential knowledge and skills. For the early childhood practitioner, this means using the child's daily routine to determine what they understand and how they learn. The child in this picture can be authentically assessed for their level of fine and gross motor skills, pattern making, and sequencing using beading. Another example is that a teacher may use fruit time to determine if a child can identify fruits, colors, shapes, and counting skills. Reasons why authentic assessment is most appropriate for young children in the early childhood classroom. Firstly, it employs methods that are unintrusive and non-intimidating to young children. This would include covert and overtly interactive methods such as observation, questioning, anecdotes, jottings, and journals. This is important as other assessment methods are not conducive to the average 2 to 5-year-old's developmental abilities. It is acknowledged that traditional assessment is very limited when assessing young children, and so authentic assessment has been favored as best practice by researchers Bagnato et al. 2014. Another reason is that it shows students' strengths and weaknesses in a detailed, more informed manner. One can see not only the results, but how the response was actively produced to a large extent. There are various types of learners in any class and should be considered when conducting authentic assessment. Rice, 2014, advocates this position when she identifies that role play and using open-ended materials and props, children begin to demonstrate many of the skills and concepts they have mastered. This gives a unique perspective on any observed strengths and weaknesses. Last but not least, it informs the teacher on what strategies and methods should be used in lesson planning. By knowing how a particular child learns and their level of understanding, the teacher can now revise current strategies and develop new ones. In their research, Bagnato et al. 2011 found that authentic assessment meets the standards of quality assessment, such as having measurable objectives and methods that can be replicated by others. It also focuses on teachable, functional competencies that informs what and how to teach. Based on these reasons, authentic assessment is clearly best suited to the young child in the early childhood classroom and is currently widely used by early childhood practitioners across the world.